When my son died, I thought the grief would be the hardest part. Then his business partner called me 3 days after the funeral. "Mr. Aldridge, I need to see you immediately. I found something in Daniel's office that changes everything. Come alone, and whatever you do, don't tell your wife. I mean, his wife, Sophie. Don't tell Sophie anything." My blood ran cold. What could be so urgent that it couldn't wait? But when I arrived at his office and saw what was spread across his desk, my legs nearly gave out. Before I continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. I stood at the window of my son's house in North Vancouver, watching the last of the mourners make their way to their cars. The February rain had finally stopped, leaving everything gray and dripping. My coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but I couldn't bring myself to move. Sophie, my daughter-in-law, was at the front door, accepting one final hug from Daniel's aunt. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue, her shoulders shaking with what looked like genuine sobs. I'd known Sophie for 7 years now, watched her marry my son, watched them build a life together in this beautiful house overlooking the inlet. But something felt wrong today, something I couldn't quite name. Then I saw him. A man in a dark jacket stood near the cedar hedge at the edge of the property. He wasn't a mourner. He'd been lingering there for 20 minutes, checking his phone, glancing toward the house. When Sophie finished with the aunt, she walked directly toward him, not casually, with purpose. I leaned closer to the window, my breath fogging the glass. Their conversation was brief but intense. He touched her arm. She leaned in close, whispered something, nodded. The body language was all wrong for a funeral. Too intimate, too urgent. I set down my coffee and headed for the door. By the time I reached the front yard, the man had disappeared around the corner. Sophie turned and saw me approaching. Her face transformed instantly. The intimate urgency vanished, replaced by the grieving widow mask I was beginning to recognize. "Dad." She reached for my hand. "You should be inside. It's cold out here." Who was that man? A flicker of something crossed her face. Annoyance? Fear? Gone before I could identify it. Just someone from Daniel's gym, paying respects. He didn't come inside. Some people find funerals difficult. She squeezed my hand, her eyes welling with fresh tears. "I need to lie down. This day has been so hard." I watched her walk back inside, her phone already in her hand before she cleared the doorway. 37 years as a structural engineer taught me to notice when things didn't add up, when load-bearing walls were compromised, when foundations showed cracks that others might miss. I was seeing cracks now, and I didn't like what they suggested. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of casseroles and condolences. But I kept watching Sophie. Her phone never left her hand. She'd type rapidly, pause, delete, type again. Her eyes would scan the room constantly, checking if anyone was watching. She never noticed me watching from the kitchen doorway. Around 9, the house finally emptied. Sophie announced she was going upstairs to rest. I heard her footsteps overhead, pacing back and forth. Then her voice, muffled but animated. Nothing like the broken widow she'd been playing all day. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus Chen, Daniel's business partner at their tech consulting firm. "Mr. Aldridge, I need to speak with you. It's urgent." "Marcus, if this is about the business arrangements, we can discuss it next week." "It's not about business." His voice was tight, strained. "Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, my office. Come alone. Don't tell Sophie you're meeting me." "I don't understand." "You will. Please, Mr. Aldridge. Daniel would want you to know the truth." I promised. Sleep wouldn't come that night. Around 1 in the morning, I found myself in Daniel's home office, now converted to a guest room where Sophie stored shopping bags and unopened packages. Designer labels, expensive brands, more than I'd ever seen her wear. I sat at the desk where my son used to work late nights, and I started remembering. 3 months ago, Sophie had suddenly become warm toward me. After years of polite distance, she'd started calling me Dad with genuine affection, asking about my health, my retirement plans, whether I'd considered updating my estate documents. "Just want to make sure you're taken care of," she'd said, patting my hand. You're all alone in that big house in Calgary. Have you thought about what happens to it when you're gone? Then there was the insurance conversation. I'd overheard her pushing Daniel one evening when they didn't know I was on the back deck. We need more coverage, Danny. What if something happens? Your father's getting older. We need to think about the future. Daniel had resisted. He always did with her, at first, but she had a way of wearing him down. The arguments had started around then, raised voices behind closed doors, Daniel's face growing haggard, dark circles under his eyes. The night before he died, Daniel had called me. Dad, can we talk? Something's been bothering me. Something about Sophie. But Sophie had interrupted in the background. Honey, we have dinner reservations. We're going to be late. Daniel had sighed. Tomorrow, Dad, I'll call you first thing. Tomorrow never came. The next morning, they said Daniel's car had gone off the Sea to Sky Highway near Squamish. Black ice, they said, lost control on a curve. The car had plunged 200 meters into the canyon below. The impact had been devastating. They'd had to identify him by dental records. But something nagged at me. Daniel had driven that highway hundreds of times. He knew every curve, every dangerous spot, and he was meticulous about his vehicle. Always had been, ever since he bought his first car at 17. Dawn. Light crept through the window. I checked my watch. 4 hours until my meeting with Marcus. I walked to the desk and found the accident report I'd requested from the RCMP. I'd barely glanced at it before, too consumed by grief. Now I read it with different eyes. Vehicle failure, steering malfunction, total loss of control. I flipped through the pages, looking for the service history. There it was. 2 weeks before the accident, Daniel had taken the car to his regular mechanic in North Van. Full inspection, complete service. Everything passed. Steering systems don't fail 2 weeks after a clean inspection. The thought arrived fully formed, delivered by nearly 4 decades of understanding how systems work, how they fail, and how they can be made to fail. Someone had tampered with that car. Upstairs, Sophie's alarm went off. I heard her moving around, starting her routine. In a few hours, she'd come downstairs with her widow's face on, and I'd have to pretend I still believed it. But first, I needed to hear what Marcus had discovered. I came downstairs at 7:30 to find Sophie in the kitchen making breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh coffee from that expensive machine Daniel had bought her last Christmas. The domestic scene perfectly staged. She smiled when she saw me, but her eyes went to her phone, lying face down on the counter. Good morning, Dad. You look exhausted. Did you sleep at all? Some. I poured coffee, keeping my movements casual. I have some errands today. Banking, paperwork for the estate. She perked up. Oh? Anything I can help with? Just boring administrative things. Should be back this afternoon. Perfect. Her smile widened. When you get back, we should talk about the future. The house, finances, planning ahead. Sure, this afternoon. She turned back to the eggs, humming softly. I'll make us a nice dinner. That salmon you like. I took my coffee to the table, watching her reflection in the window above the sink. The moment she thought I wasn't looking, her face went blank. She picked up her phone, typed something quickly, and smiled. A real smile. Nothing like the careful expression she wore for me. 20 minutes later, I backed out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing at the window, phone pressed to her ear, laughing, not a trace of grief. Chen Consulting occupied a glass tower in downtown Vancouver. Marcus's assistant met me in the lobby and escorted me to a conference room on the 15th floor. The view stretched across the harbor to the North Shore Mountains, still capped with winter snow. Marcus entered 30 seconds later, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He locked the door behind him. Thank you for coming, Mr. Aldridge. What I'm about to show you will be difficult. Just show me. He hesitated, then picked up a tablet from the table. I should have brought this to you sooner. I kept hoping I was misreading the situation. Marcus, show me. He tapped the screen. Security camera footage appeared. Their office parking garage, time-stamped 8 days before Daniel's accident. My son paced beside his car, phone pressed to his ear. Even without audio, his distress was obvious. Jaw clenched, free hand gesturing sharply. Marcus adjusted something, and sound crackled through. Daniel's voice, strained and loud. I said, "No, Sophie. I'm not selling Dad's property out from under him. That's insane. He built that house with his own hands." A pause. Sophie's response was inaudible. Daniel's face crumpled. "I don't care about the money. Family isn't for sale, and I'm starting to wonder what else you've been lying about." He ended the call and sat in his car for 15 minutes, head in his hands. The footage showed my son weeping in an empty parking garage. Completely alone, Marcus stopped the playback. This was recorded 8 days before the accident. My throat had closed up. Play it again. We watched it 3 more times. Each viewing revealed new details. The way Daniel's hands shook, how he kept checking his phone, the defeated slump of his shoulders when he finally drove away. Marcus crossed to a wall safe and withdrew a thick envelope. Daniel left this with me 6 weeks ago. His instructions were specific. Give it to you if anything happened to him. Not to Sophie, only to you. Inside were bank statements with transactions highlighted in yellow. $28,000 transferred in increments over 4 months from Daniel's personal account. The recipient, J. Parsons. There was also a handwritten note in Daniel's careful script. She says it's for her sister's medical bills. I checked. Her sister doesn't have those bills. Where's this money going? Why is she lying to me? Beneath that, a life insurance policy. $750,000. Dated 3 months ago. Daniel's signature looked forced, the letters uneven. He was scared, Marcus said quietly. The last few weeks, he was distracted, stressed. He wanted to talk to me about family problems, but kept putting it off. Then, 2 days before the accident, he scheduled a meeting with me for that Monday. He said he needed advice about protecting my father. Those were his exact words. He never made it to that meeting. No, he didn't. I spread everything across the conference table. Bank statements, insurance policy, accident report. My engineering training kicked in. That methodical approach to evidence I'd used for decades. Connect the dots, establish timeline, identify points of failure. Daniel had his car fully serviced 18 days before the accident, I said, pointing to the service record. Complete inspection. Everything passed. Marcus leaned over the documents. And steering systems don't fail without cause. They don't catastrophically malfunction 2 weeks after a clean bill of health. Not without help. I tapped the accident report. Someone accessed that vehicle after the service. Someone who knew what they were doing. The words hung in the air between us. Marcus handed me a USB drive. Everything's on here. Video, documents, copies of everything in that envelope. He pressed it into my palm. Keep it safe. What are you going to do? I looked at the evidence of betrayal spread across the table. The timeline pointing to premeditated murder. Find out exactly what happened. All of it. Every detail. I met his eyes. And make sure justice is served. Whatever it takes. Marcus nodded slowly. Daniel was like a brother to me. Whatever you need. Copies, resources, access to anything. You have it. I need to know who J. Parsons is. I'll start digging. Quietly, I gathered the documents, slipped them back into the envelope. The USB drive went into my pocket next to my phone. Evidence, proof, purpose. The drive back to North Vancouver took 40 minutes in midday traffic, but I didn't go to Daniel's house. I pulled into a Tim Hortons parking lot 3 blocks away and sat with the engine running. My phone rang. Sophie. I watched her name flash on the screen until it went to voicemail. A minute later, the notification appeared. I played it on speaker. Dad, where are you? I thought you'd be back by now. We really should talk about the estate and the properties. When will you be home? I'm making coffee. Her voice was warm, concerned, loving, completely false. I played it twice more, listening for cracks in the performance. There weren't any. She was good. She'd probably been practicing this role for months, maybe years. I pulled out a notebook and started a new page. Listed everything I knew, everything I needed to find out. J. Parsons was at the top, underlined 3 times. Because it was a plan. I was certain now. The insurance policy, the pressure about my Calgary property, the arguments, the convenient steering failure on a mountain highway, the perfect timing. Someone had killed my son for money. Someone had calculated his worth and decided it was higher than his life. And that someone was living in his house right now, probably wondering where I was, probably getting impatient to start spending her inheritance. My phone buzzed. Another call from Sophie. I let it ring out. I opened the notebook to a fresh page and wrote investigation log at the top. Numbered each line, dated each entry. This was no longer about grief. This was about evidence, truth, and eventually justice. I started the car and pulled back onto Marine Drive. But I didn't turn toward Daniel's house. Not yet. I had work to do first. I drove straight to the RCMP detachment in North Vancouver. The accident report listed Constable Amanda Walsh as the investigating officer. I needed to know exactly where the official case stood. The detachment smelled like old coffee and pine cleaner. Walsh met me in a small interview room, her uniform crisp, file folder tucked under her arm. She looked young but competent. "Mr. Aldridge." She shook my hand. "I'm very sorry about your son." I sat, placing my own folder on the table. "The steering malfunction. Your report confirmed that." Walsh opened her file. "Confirmed, yes. Catastrophic failure, leading to total loss of vehicle control. He had the car serviced 18 days before. Full inspection." Walsh sighed. "I know. I saw the records. But proving deliberate tampering without forensic evidence of tool marks or chemical interference." She shook her head. "It could be anything. Manufacturing defect, road debris damage, metal fatigue. The vehicle was destroyed in the fall. There's nothing left to examine." "You don't believe it was an accident." "What I believe doesn't matter, Mr. Aldridge. I need proof. Without it, there's nothing I can do. I'm sorry." I left the detachment with exactly what I'd expected. Sympathy, but no action. The system had limitations. I didn't. 2 days passed. I played the grieving father at Daniel's house while my mind catalogued every detail, every inconsistency. Sophie continued her performance, bringing me tea, asking about my day, slowly circling the topic of my Calgary property like a patient predator. On the third day, I visited Daniel's mechanic in North Vancouver, West Side Auto. The owner, Gary, had serviced Daniel's vehicles for years. Gary's face fell when I introduced myself. "Daniel. Man, I'm so sorry. He was a good guy. Always on time, never questioned the work. I need to ask about his last service. The steering components." Gary's expression shifted. "Let me pull up the records." He led me to a cluttered office, typed into a computer. "Here. Full service 18 days before the accident. I did the work myself, checked everything. Power steering, tie rods, rack, and pinion. That car was solid. Was that the last time you saw the vehicle?" Gary scrolled through the screen, then stopped. "Actually, no. His wife brought it in about 3 weeks before that service. Said it was for a noise check. Daniel hadn't scheduled anything. I called him to confirm. He seemed confused but said to do whatever she wanted. My pulse quickened. What date? January 14th. Why? Did she come alone? Gary leaned back, thinking, no. Now that you mention it, she had someone with her. A guy. Hang on. He stood, motioned for me to follow. We keep security footage for 90 days. Let me check. In the shop's surveillance room, Gary rewound digital footage to January 14th. There was Sophie's white SUV pulling into the lot. She emerged from the driver's side. From the passenger side, a man. Late 30s, athletic build, confident walk. Who is that? I asked. Gary leaned closer to the screen. I don't know him, but he seemed comfortable around cars. Asked a lot of questions about the shop, our security, whether we had cameras in the service bays. Gary paused. We don't, by the way. Just the lot and office. He printed screenshots without me asking, handed them over in an envelope. Daniel was good people. If something happened that wasn't an accident, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. I drove to a hotel in downtown Vancouver with the envelope on the passenger seat, the man's face frozen in grainy surveillance images. Jay Parsons? Possibly. Someone connected to Sophie? Definitely. A person who'd asked specifically about camera coverage in the service bays, where a car's steering system could be accessed. The pieces were connecting. That evening, I didn't return to Daniel's house. I called Sophie and told her I was staying in the city, meeting with Daniel's lawyer in the morning about the estate. She was disappointed but understanding. "Of course, Dad. Take care of yourself. We'll talk when you get back." I spent the night in my hotel room, reviewing everything. The financial records showing $28,000 to Jay Parsons. The surveillance photos. The insurance policy. Daniel's warnings. By morning, I had a plan. I called a private investigation firm I'd found online. Anderson Security Solutions. Licensed, professional, good reviews. The owner, Tom Anderson, met me at a coffee shop in Burnaby that afternoon. Tom was ex-RCMP, mid-50s, sharp eyes, no wasted words. "You mentioned surveillance on your daughter-in-law. What exactly are we documenting?" "Her activities. Her relationship with an unknown man. And I believe she may have been involved in my son's death." Tom didn't flinch. "What's the time frame?" "As long as it takes. But I need results within 2 weeks. 3,000 retainer. Daily updates by text. Photos, video, audio where legally obtained." He met my eyes. "If she's meeting someone regularly, I'll have proof within a week." I wrote the check without hesitation. My retirement savings had been for security. This was security. Just not the kind I'd imagined. "If they're planning something," Tom said, "they'll talk. People always think they're more careful than they are." The next 7 days tested every ounce of patience I had. I returned to Daniel's house, playing my role, confused, overwhelmed, gradually accepting Sophie's suggestions about the future. She escalated her campaign daily, brought a real estate agent to just look at my Calgary property photos, mentioned the house was probably worth at least $400,000, talked about simplifying my life, reducing stress, maybe considering a retirement community. "You shouldn't be rattling around in that big house alone, Dad. Wouldn't it be easier to have people around? Activities? Support?" I played along. "I suppose you're right about the maintenance. It is a lot of work." Each small concession strengthened her confidence. She thought she was winning. Tom's texts came daily. Subject observed. Meeting confirmed. Same location. Male companion identified. Name Jason Parsons, personal trainer. Previous conviction for fraud. Currently works at a gym in Burnaby. Audio captured. You need to hear this. On the 7th day, we met at a different coffee shop. Tom slid a thick envelope across the table, followed by a USB drive. "Your instincts were correct, Mr. Aldridge. And it's worse than infidelity." The report documented 5 meetings between Sophie and Jason at a motel in Surrey. They arrived separately, left together. The pattern was consistent. Tuesdays and Thursdays, around 2 in the afternoon. Then came the photographs. Sophie and Jason in the parking lot, his hand on her back. Sophie laughing, relaxed. Nothing like the grieving widow she performed at home. "You got audio?" "Better than expected. Parabolic microphone. They thought they were private." I paid for the coffee, took the envelope, and drove to my hotel. In my room, I sat with my laptop open, earbuds in. Jason's voice came through first, impatient and rough. "The cops aren't looking at anything. You're clear. Now we need to move on, the old man." Sophie's response was casual, almost amused. "I'm working on it. He's starting to trust the idea of selling the Calgary place. Just needs a little more convincing." "How much longer?" "I'm tired of waiting. Give me 2 more weeks. He's old, confused, since Daniel died. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him." I sat completely still, listening to my daughter-in-law call me the old man, discuss me like I was an obstacle to remove rather than a person. The recording continued. Jason asking about my will, Sophie saying she was working on that too. Then Jason's voice, laughing. "And if he doesn't cooperate, accidents happen, especially to seniors living alone." My hands shook, the only external sign of the rage burning through my chest. But I didn't break. I didn't scream or punch the wall. Instead, I thought, this is evidence. This is proof of conspiracy. This is what I need. The next morning, I met with a lawyer, Patricia Okonkwo, of Okonkwo and Associates in downtown Vancouver. 15 years specializing in wrongful death cases. Strong track record. Reputation for aggressive litigation. Her office overlooked Cole Harbor. She listened without interrupting as I laid out everything. Marcus's video, Daniel's envelope, the auto shop footage, Tom's surveillance reports, and recordings. She reviewed each piece methodically, taking notes. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Aldridge, you have substantial circumstantial evidence of conspiracy to commit murder and ongoing conspiracy to defraud you. But BC courts require clear proof for wrongful death, civil cases. What does that mean? We need more, either a criminal conviction or additional evidence showing explicit admission of involvement in Daniel's death. The recordings show conspiracy to defraud you, but they're not confessing to murder. They reference the police not investigating, which could mean anything. Patricia leaned forward. Here's the good news. They think they've succeeded. They're comfortable. Comfortable people make mistakes. If you give them enough rope, I understood immediately. I needed more admissions, more explicit statements. Keep appearing to go along with their plans. Act confused, overwhelmed. If she pushes harder, she'll reveal more. That evening, I returned to Daniel's house. Sophie was waiting with wine and a charcuterie board, expensive cheese, imported crackers. The domestic scene perfectly staged. I sat down, accepted a glass, and began my new performance. I've been thinking about what you said, about the Calgary house. Sophie's entire posture changed. Attentive, eager. Oh, Dad, I'm so glad. It really would be for the best. I'll need help with the paperwork. Lawyers, transfers. I don't understand half of it anymore. Of course. She could barely contain her satisfaction. I know some excellent people. They'll handle everything. You won't have to worry about a thing. Every word was being recorded by the device Tom had provided, hidden in my jacket pocket. Small, professional grade, impossible to detect. I nodded slowly, playing exhausted. All right, let's start looking at it next week. After she went to bed, triumphant and satisfied, I uploaded the recording to secure cloud storage. Her eagerness was documented, her manipulation captured in digital clarity. 2 weeks later, the forensic accountant I'd hired, a specialist named David Park, requested a meeting. His conference table was covered with spreadsheets, highlighted bank statements, printed documents organized in neat stacks. Mr. Aldridge, what I found is systematic financial abuse spanning over a year. He walked me through it methodically. Sophie had withdrawn $63,000 from joint accounts over 8 months, claiming expenses that never existed. Medical bills for procedures Daniel never had. Home repairs that were never done. Business expenses for a consulting firm that didn't exist. She forged your son's signature 4 times. David showed me withdrawal slips with handwriting analysis overlays. The pressure and slant are wrong. These aren't his signatures. The money had gone to Jason Parsons in increments designed to avoid attention. But David had found something more damaging. I recovered email correspondence between your daughter-in-law and Jason Parsons. He turned his laptop toward me. November, Jason writing. Got the parts. Tie rod end, cotter pin remover. Should look like wear and tear. Sophie's response. Make sure nothing looks tampered with. Has to seem like an accident. December. Jason asking about the timeline. Sophie responding, after the insurance increase goes through. February, at earliest. January 28th, 4 days before Daniel's death. Thursday morning. He always takes the sea to sky to meet clients in Whistler. Perfect spot. High speed, cliffs, hard to investigate afterward. I sat completely still, reading their clinical discussion of murdering my son. They had planned it like a project, purchased equipment, chosen the location, waited for optimal timing. I'm sorry, David said quietly. This is premeditated conspiracy to commit murder. You need to take this to the RCMP immediately. That evening, I didn't go back to Daniel's house. I called Sophie and said I was staying in the city again. More meetings with estate lawyers. She was annoyed but hid it well. Of course, Dad. Take your time. We'll talk soon about everything. I spent the night reviewing everything. The emails were explicit. Premeditation, method, timeline, motive. Combined with Tom's surveillance recordings, the auto shop footage, Daniel's warnings, and the accident report, I had a comprehensive case. The next morning, I met with Patricia and presented everything. "We need to take this to Constable Walsh immediately," Patricia said. "This isn't just civil material. This is criminal evidence of first-degree murder conspiracy." Walsh agreed to meet that afternoon. We sat across from her in the same interview room where she'd told me her hands were tied. She looked different now, more attentive, her detective instincts engaged. Patricia presented the evidence chronologically. Financial fraud over 12 months, the emails discussing steering parts and timing, surveillance of ongoing conspiracy. Walsh reviewed the emails carefully, particularly the January 28th message about Thursday morning and the Sea to Sky Highway. She pulled out Daniel's accident report. Daniel died Thursday, February 1st, morning, Sea to Sky Highway. Her expression hardened. "This changes everything. These emails are direct evidence of premeditated conspiracy to commit murder." She looked at me with genuine regret. "Mr. Aldridge, I apologize for closing the case prematurely. Can you act on this now? I'm reopening as a homicide investigation. Full resources." She stood, collecting the evidence. "I'll be in touch within 48 hours. We're going after both of them." Walsh moved quickly. Within 2 days, she obtained warrants for Jason Parsons' phone records, email accounts, financial transactions. Jason was brought in for questioning. On March 8th, Tom called me that evening. Parsons went in cocky. Came out 3 hours later looking like he'd seen a ghost. Walsh confronted him with everything. The emails, the money transfers, the auto shop footage. He lawyered up immediately, but his reaction confirmed everything. 5 days later, Tom called urgently. "Parsons just showed up at Sophie's location, a coffee shop in North Van. You need to see this." He sent real-time video. Jason arrived at the coffee shop where Sophie was waiting. His body language radiated fury. They talked briefly, then moved to his truck in the parking lot. They didn't know Tom had positioned an audio device underneath the vehicle. The argument was explosive. Jason's voice, "You said the old man would sign over everything. You promised this would be done by now. Now cops are asking about emails, about parts I ordered. What did you do?" Sophie trying to calm him. "They don't have anything solid. Just stay quiet." "Stay quiet?" "They showed me pictures of us at that motel. They know about the money." The argument escalated. Sophie tried maintaining control, but she was cracking too. Then Jason said it. "I did what you asked. I cut that tie rod clean, made it look like metal fatigue. You said we'd be set after the insurance came through." Sophie's response was urgent, panicked. "Keep your voice down, you idiot." But it was too late. Tom's recorder had captured everything. I forwarded it immediately to Walsh. Within an hour, she texted back. "Warrant issued for Jason Parsons. Conspiracy to commit murder. Moving on, Sophie Aldridge tomorrow." March 14th, 6 o'clock in the morning. I sat in a Vancouver hotel room, watching my phone. At 6:14, Walsh texted, "Arrest in progress." I drove to North Vancouver. 3 unmarked RCMP vehicles were parked outside Daniel's house. Walsh emerged first, followed by 4 officers in tactical vests. I parked across the street and watched. They were inside for 8 minutes. Then the front door opened. Sophie emerged in handcuffs, wearing yoga clothes, her face contorted with shock and rage. Her eyes scanned the street and found me standing by my car. Understanding and fury hit her simultaneously. "You." She lunged toward me, but the officers held her back. "You senile old man. I'm your family. Daniel was my husband." My voice came out cold, steady. "Daniel was my son, and you murdered him for insurance money." They put her in the back of a police car. She was still screaming threats, promising lawsuits, calling me delusional. I watched the vehicles pull away. The house fell silent. After 3 months of lies and manipulation, Sophie was finally gone. The civil trial began in June. Patricia had filed a wrongful death lawsuit for $2 million. Loss of companionship, emotional distress, punitive damages. Sophie's defense lawyer, a man named Brendan Cole, attempted every tactic. painted me as a confused elderly man, suggested the financial transfers were legitimate loans, claimed the emails were taken out of context. Each argument crumbled under Patricia's cross-examination. We played the recordings. We displayed the emails on large screens. We brought in David Park to walk the jury through the systematic fraud. Then came Jason Parsons. Part of his plea agreement required truthful testimony. He entered the courtroom in orange prison clothes, shackled, defeated. For 3 hours, he detailed the conspiracy. Sophie had approached him at the gym in August. Said she wanted out of her marriage, but needed financial security first. She proposed increasing Daniel's insurance, then staging an accident. Jason would sabotage the steering. They'd split the money. Jason described purchasing the tools online, waiting for the right opportunity, accessing Daniel's car at the auto shop while Sophie distracted the staff. He described February 1st. Waiting for news, Sophie calling with fake tears. Something terrible happened. During his testimony, Sophie began shaking her head, whispering urgently to her lawyer. When Jason described her coldly calculating the timing for Daniel's death, she lost control. She stood, screaming, "You lying snake. You said you loved me. You said we'd be together." The judge gavelled sharply. Cole tried to restrain her. "I didn't force you to do anything. It was your idea, your plan." The judge ordered a recess. Officers escorted the hysterical Sophie from the courtroom. The jury had seen her mask completely shatter. When court reconvened, Sophie was subdued, medicated, but the damage was done. Her outburst had confirmed everything, Jason said. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. The foreman stood. "We find for the plaintiff. We find that defendants Sophie Aldridge and Jason Parsons are liable for the wrongful death of Daniel Aldridge. The damages, $1.6 million. I felt no triumph, only quiet satisfaction. Justice had spoken. The criminal sentencing followed in September. Jason received 18 years for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. He'd be nearly 60 when released. Sophie's hearing was the same day. She appeared in prison clothing, thinner, older than when this began. The judge asked if she had anything to say. She read from a prepared statement. "I'm sorry for what happened. I made terrible choices. I take responsibility." The words were hollow, coached, devoid of genuine remorse. The judge wasn't fooled. "Mrs. Aldridge, you orchestrated your husband's murder for financial gain. You showed no mercy to Daniel Aldridge. This court will show you none. 22 years in a federal penitentiary without possibility of parole." The gavel fell. Sophie was led away. She didn't look at me. That evening, I drove to the cemetery in North Vancouver, where we'd buried Daniel. His headstone was simple granite. Daniel Thomas Aldridge, 1986 to 2024. Beloved son. I stood before it, hands in pockets, and spoke quietly. "It's done, son. 22 years for her, 18 for him. They won't profit from what they did. I made sure of that." A February rain began to fall, soft and cold. "I know it doesn't bring you back. Nothing can. But your death mattered. Justice was served." I placed my hand on the cool granite. "I love you. I always will." The next week, I flew back to Calgary, to the house I'd built with my own hands 40 years ago. The house Sophie had tried to steal. Marcus called to tell me he was establishing a scholarship at UBC in Daniel's name. The Daniel Aldridge Technology Ethics Award, for students who showed integrity alongside talent. I thanked him. Daniel would have liked that. 8 months ago, I stood at the window of my son's house, watching Sophie whisper with a stranger at the gate. That was the beginning. Now it's the ending. Justice has been delivered through proper channels. Sophie will spend the next 2 decades in prison. Jason as well. The conspiracy they built has been completely dismantled. Daniel's death has been answered within the law, through evidence and testimony and jury verdict. I don't feel triumph. Revenge stories suggest satisfaction, catharsis, closure. I feel none of those things. I feel tired. I feel older. But I also feel that I kept my promise, to find the truth, to make sure justice was served. Daniel's life mattered. His death had consequences. That has to be enough. I sit on my back deck in Calgary as the autumn sun sets over the Rockies. My phone shows a message from Patricia. Final paperwork for the civil judgment. Official closure of the case. I'll read it tomorrow. Tonight, I just sit with Daniel's photo album on my lap, looking at the house I protected, the home he grew up in. Life continues. The pain of loss doesn't vanish with justice. But knowing the truth, seeing accountability delivered, provides something. Not peace exactly, but the absence of war. The fight is over. Daniel's killers have been punished. Tomorrow, I'll wake up and continue living, carrying my son's memory, knowing I did everything a father could do. Justice, imperfect and painful, has been restored. And somehow, that will have to be enough. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the video on the left. Thank you for watching.